But let me just begin with Dr. I'm sorry, Dr. Waqas. Let me just begin with you. And Dr. Waqas is a member of the Kashmir delegation to the UN Human Rights Council. He's a human rights activist, and he's also the head of the government and public policy department at NUML University, which is the National University for Modern Languages in Islamabad. And I had the pleasure, of course, also working with him on a number of human rights issues pertaining mainly to the Kashmir conflict. And I'd like to begin with you, Dr. Waqas. And the reason I would like to begin with you is I would like to ask you a direct question, and I'd like you, if it's possible for you to begin from there. How is it, and I noticed that, I'm just coming from Azad Kashmir, and as I said, out of the 1,000 young men and women that I've seen near the ceasefire line with India, I saw the largest number of young women and ladies, highly educated, and really enthusiastic, would like to work on conflict resolution, and much more active, frankly, than I thought. How is it that women in this conflict zone in Kashmir, both the Azad Kashmir and the Indian-occupied Kashmir, how is it that Kashmiri women, and a lot of people don't know this, Kashmir has the highest literacy rate in both Pakistan and India. So Azad Kashmir in Pakistan and Indian-occupied Kashmir under Indian control, occupation, both of these Kashmirs have the highest level of literacy in both countries. So it's really amazing. So how is it that women in this conflict zone escaped the trap of violent extremism when, frankly, we in Pakistan suffered that wave of extremism at one time because of the war in Afghanistan. Afghanistan suffered that. The region did. We see now a form of religious extremism now rising in India. So how is it that this region really escaped this scourge?
Bismillah, thank you very much, Gracious Saab, and for inviting me. And then this is a very wonderful, interesting topic, I guess, which is less debated in the context of Kashmir as well, particularly when we see the overall conflict and the context. To begin with, I mean, the women's critical role in conflict, and we see that they have a very critical role in reshaping and sometimes delegitimizing violent conflicts across the globe. We see that they have been largely portrayed as the victims or effectives in the conflict because of their certain roles. Generally, that those roles are assigned to them in a patriarchal society like us. We also seen that one of the areas is that they also been actively involved in various conflicts. But when it comes to the peace building tables and negotiation tables, their energies and efforts are undervalued because they don't find much space in those decision-making tables. This is one aspect. We also see that there's a growing recognition of women's role in conflicts, in creating more spaces for them, enabling them, providing platform for them to come up with their own narratives of sufferings, their own narratives and visions for their own future. And we have seen that in United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, I guess, giving a lot of strength to women gender, in particularly to play the active role in the conflicts. Just in general, before I come to Kashmir, in the context of Pakistan, we also see that we also seen that we have suffered from the wave of terrorism. Society collectively responded at different levels. But we have to fundamentally see the structure of our society, which sometimes disempower women, intentionally or unintentionally, but it has some very strong roots, actually. We also see that the composition of a political and decision-making structure, which is very important for shaping up the future of any country. We see that less roles, actually. You see the political participation. We had a wonderful question in the last session about the giving spaces largely in that direction about the local government system, which was a very important question. So largely we see that society inherently is not trying to, but it's, I must say, disempowering. We have seen that we have almost 50% of women in our society, so the proportion to decision-making level is not there. We also have to deconstruct this in our society, that how disempowering is our language when it comes to empowering women in our society. Overall literature we use, that we produce in society, the jargons we use. The entire framework of society, we have to be much more gender inclusive and gender sensitive that we have seen. That's not there. I guess there's a gradual transformation in Pakistan, the way we witness that. Generally, people say we should give space to women gender. That's not even right construct. We say, I mean, we are occupying their space, we should come back. That's it. Give them their own space to exercise, say something. So I guess that's something which, in general, in society, we have to see that. I guess when we say the female gender, they can be very crucial in the context that, I mean, they suffer in the form of mothers, sisters, in many capacities in violent conflicts. But when it comes to deciding their future, when it comes to deciding any political settlement at societal level, we don't find their space in place. I guess they are more sensitized and greater antennas to anticipate these tendencies actually when it comes to the larger society. We have seen that they've been used in many places religiously to motivate in many contexts. We see the way the terrorist or the extremist tendencies use women as an object or commodity. I mean, let me say token, to influence their own, identity or promote their own, motivation sort of thing. So I guess this is one of the aspects in Pakistan, in region, we have to see that how we can be more gender sensitive, how we can improve our language, how we can improve our literature, how we can improve our understanding of this female gender construct, in particular in society. I guess the realization and sense of it can help us move ahead. In particularly when you say about Kashmir, we have to understand 2-3 things. Kashmir, particularly Valley, we have seen that it is it has a very strong historical, cultural background of thousands of years ago. Their identity, their culture has a history. And traditionally, if you see, Kashmiris have a very strong, empowering culture for women. We have seen poetess like Hibba Khatun, Rani Vida, I guess she was a queen. She was physically challenged, but even then she was known as a very powerful queen at that time. So in the context of Kashmir, we see that their literature, their overall social fabric, it's very empowering for the women and very encouraging for them. It's sort of very inclusive society. One of the reasons is they have over centuries been battling against the occupation one way or the other. So society collectively responded towards the occupation. That is one of the areas where I guess women gender in particular got a lot of role in encouragement. Now what we have seen in Kashmir right now, which is very different from the other conflicts, women suffered a lot. The way Indian state responded to the Kashmiris' resistance, it was quite intense and brutal in nature. We have seen that the structures of violence are so deep that one way or the other, they're also targeting the gender. They have used female as shields in many instances. What was the idea? Idea was there's a wave of terrorism and extremism in the world. It's so easy when you abduct people, when you kill people, when you perpetrate state violence, people will react. And it's very easy for state to label them as with people with extremist tendencies. Here comes the role of Kashmiri women. We have seen 23rd of March would be Kashmiri Women Resistance Day, which we don't find in many conflicts. We have seen that Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons is chaired by Parveena Hangar, the Iron Lady of Kashmir. We have seen many women taking leading role, making the women collectives in Kashmir. What is the idea? Idea is that the resistance of Kashmiri people should not be hijacked by the state violence, and the people at the end of the day, young people in particular, they should not sway around and then become the violent actors. Second one, dynamics of Kashmiri society, you have to see that there's a very close communication and community bond between male and female gender. Because of certain cultural backgrounds, certain civilization thing, the communication between male and female gender is not that the way it is seen in India, Pakistan. I may say it's a very patriarchal. It's not a that much patriarchal society. It's still there, but it's not that much because of certain past and history of it. Second, there is one important thing when it comes to Kashmiri women. There are almost 10,000 half widows. Now, there's a subcategory of the women who don't know about the future of their husbands because they're abducted by the Indian state operators. Now, again, they made a sort of coalition, a group of people resisting, telling their children to adopt some non-violent transformative way to approach the state structure, which they believe is occupied, but still they are not treating toward the violent path. This is very encouraging. Now, what is the overall message that comes out from the women of the Kashmiri society? That they take the ownership of this entire region, of the conflict. They believe that they have a very central role in to be played in this conflict, and which is a great in nature, because I must say, even their political party structure, you have the people like ASEAN Dravid resisting occupation, which is a role model in one way or the other way. Many people will differ with narratives, but that's how the women come to the society forefront, taking a political stance, position, in a society where you have more than 700,000 Indian troops, with laws like Armed Forces Special Power Act. You're very vulnerable, still taking role. It's an example. I guess that's very encouraging. Just one part when you come to AJK. AJK over the period of the time evolved from 47 to 2009. Yes. One of the reasons is the Azad Kashmir, for the audience, generally people call Pakistani side of Kashmir, AJK, what we call the British territory. But the AJK, there is one important thing. It has never been a sort of society with a lot of lands and wealth and that, social hierarchy and all that, economic thing. It's been almost a society with the people from the same economic backgrounds. So it was a blessing in one way or the other way for them as well, because people have to struggle hard, send their children to the schools, colleges, universities, and at the end of the day, they got their children educated. And now the literacy rate in AJK as compared to the other regions in Pakistan provinces, including other, even Gilgit, that's far more, it's better.
Dr. Waqas, here I have a question before I move on. And very quickly, if you can give a brief answer to this. There's a myth, and it's a misconception, that Islam as a religion is an instrument or a tool in suppressing the role of women in society. And of course, the counter argument to that is that religion can be abused by, you could say, certain groups, to misinterpret the religion and use it to reduce the spaces for women in society. Now, in Kashmir, I know, because I've traveled that region, the Kashmiris are conservative Muslims, but despite that, I see even Kashmiris from poor backgrounds, people in far-flung villages, they ensure that their girls get education. So I juxtapose these two things. On the one hand, you have these Kashmiris who are conservative Muslims, they in a conflict zone, but at the same time they make sure that the girls in the households, they get education, and they're not prevented, and boys are not given priority. So how did the Kashmiri society balance this? And very quickly.
See, because one thing we need to understand that there should be a differentiation between a resistance and then when we use the largely, because in Kashmiris have been the victim of this labeling of extremism by the state, occupier state. So there is always a fine thin difference between this resistance, the way people resist, and their and the way you portray them as extremist of the extremist tendencies. I guess despite having a very strong, stringent state response to their legitimate rights, struggle for their legitimate rights, even then people realized one thing over the period of the time. At one time, there was a violence which we believe that it was our right to resist against the occupation for our survival. Society has transformed itself. And that is the realization, that is the Kashmiriyat, I must say, that gives them strength. Kashmir historically is known as the land of Sufis, peaceful people. And that the inspiration they draw from their religion, their soil, their literature, their poetry, But you must imagine the level of tyranny imposed on them. I mean, even we saw the women pallet victims by a state which is called itself a democratic, secular state. So I guess there is inbuilt realization within Kashmir. You have seen many women even representing from AJK to in Foreign Office of Pakistan, in Pakistani mainstream politics. So I guess this is not one day thing. This has evolved over the period of time. We have learned over the period of time that this gender role in particular, female gender, we have to be more balanced in that. And we have to leave that space back. I'm not saying it's 100% very inclusive society, but at least there's a sense in that. And in Valley, it is more than AJK, I must say, because of its cultural background and a very rich traditional history.
That's great. Thank you very much, Dr. Waqas, for this overview. Very interesting.